No one can say that they didn't know. Not our politicians, not our media outlets. What we are currently witnessing, as I keep saying, is one of the great crimes of our age. And we are learning a brutal lesson in real time. How are grave crimes, crimes defined by utter depravity, which are willingly not only confessed to by their perpetrators, but boasted about, where the victims are completely dehumanised, how are these grave crimes made possible? No crime in history has been so documented as it happened. No crime in history has been so confessed to over and over again from top to bottom of the society responsible. This is a lesson which should not have been taught, and certainly not at the expense of the Palestinian people as they suffer genocide. In the past few days, Israel has been committing perhaps its worst crimes since this genocide began. We do not know the true extent of these crimes in northern Gaza because Israel has cut off all communication there. What footage we do have is reminiscent of some of the worst crimes committed in the history of our species. I can't post most of this footage. YouTube would age restrict this video immediately, and frankly, many of you will understandably find it too difficult to watch. I don't want to watch it either, but unfortunately we have to record these crimes to make it clear what happened. Otherwise, there will never be accountability. Now, much of the evidence comes from Jabalia, a refugee camp in the north. One is footage of Jabalia Prep School. It shows men with their heads partly blown off. It shows the bloody corpses of women and of little children. In other evidence, you can see 7 children. They were killed after they were targeted by Israeli artillery. They were trying to get water for their families in Jabalia when they were slaughtered. Meanwhile, the Israeli army has set fire to the Alpu, Kuwait and Hamad schools in Jabalia, which were serving as UN shelters for desperate, traumatised, hungry Palestinians. In another, Palestinians, including the young, are shown having been forced to undress and wear plastic suits, where they will be taken to camps in Israel, where we all have access to some of the most hideous reports of torture, rape, gang rape, including detainees being tortured to death. Meanwhile, Israeli television boastfully shows Palestinians forced to leave Jabalia, a sea of human misery under threat of violence and death. Can News, the Israeli national broadcaster, broadcast the following footage captioned with documentation: Gazans leave Jabalia. Gazans leave Jabalia indeed, as though they're just voluntarily just getting out of there rather than facing a murderous Israeli rampage. As Mohammed Shahada, a brilliant Palestinian analyst, writes, working on a long paper that touches on what's left of Gaza for the day after, Israel literally destroyed all universities, factories, shops, companies, government offices, courts, mosques, and the vast majority of schools, hospitals, banks, homes. No possibility for organised human life. Meanwhile, the Western media whitewashes these crimes. Let's talk about this. Because what we're seeing here is the erasure of the humanity of the victims by most of the Western media. That's what we're talking about. So let's humanise one. This is Masahin, who was in Jabalia camp.
مرحبا أنا محاسن من غزة بحاول أضل على قيد الحياة. نحن في غزة بخير طمنونا عنكم نحن في الحرب بخير ماذا عنكم أنتم.
She says there, hello, I'm Masahin from Gaza. I will try to stay alive. Here's the last video she posted. With the apocalyptic sound of war behind her, she depicted an image inspired by Shaban al-Dalu, the young Palestinian man who burned to death in hospital the day before his 20th birthday. It shows a burning Palestinian with "We are burning" inscribed above it. Now, she was killed 3 days ago in an Israeli airstrike. It's difficult to put into words, isn't it? She there depicts the horror of a young Palestinian burning to death, a fate which almost certainly befell her very shortly afterwards. Now, we can glean some of the atrocities being committed in Gaza through the Western media, but on some quite astonishing framing deployed. And it's disturbing to talk about this. One headline on CNN reads as follows: "He got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him. Israeli soldiers returning from war struggled with trauma and suicide." Now, the original editor's note at the start reads, "Editor's note, the story contains details of suicide that some readers may find upsetting. The story expects us to focus our feelings of empathy on this soldier." It reads, "A 40-year-old father of four, Eliran Mizrahi, deployed to Gaza after the deadly Hamas-led attacks on Israel on October 7th, 2023. The Israeli military reservist returned a different person, traumatized by what he had witnessed in the war against Hamas in the Strip," his family told CNN. 6 months after he was first sent to fight, he was struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder back at home. Before he was due to redeploy, he took his own life. It goes on, he got out of Gaza, but Gaza did not get out of him, and he died after it because of the post-trauma, his mother, Jenny Mizrahi, says. Now, I relish no one's suicide. As I always say, never let the evil of this world rot away your humanity. Never relish death. When you read on, some rather important context emerges. His mother says he saw a lot of people die. Maybe he even killed someone, but we don't teach our children to do things like this. So when he did this, something like this, maybe it was a shock for him. Guy Zakin, Mizrahi's friend and co-driver of the bulldozer, provided further insight into their experience in Gaza, says CNN. "We saw very, very, very difficult things," Zakin told CNN, "things that are difficult to accept." The former soldier has spoken publicly about the psychological trauma endured by Israeli troops in Gaza. In a testimony to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, in June, Zakin said that on many occasions, soldiers had to run over terrorists, dead and alive, in the hundreds. "Everything squirts out," he added. Zakin says he can no longer eat meat, as it reminds him of the gruesome scenes he witnessed from his bulldozer in Gaza, and struggles to sleep at night, the sound of explosions ringing in his head. Goodness me. So we've gleaned here that Israeli soldiers were ordered to run over those described as terrorists, dead or alive, in the hundreds. Now, we know already that there is an all-expansive definition of terrorist used by the Israeli state and its soldiers. But in any case, running over living, breathing human beings as they are alive is a truly depraved war crime. And this says hundreds. And for that matter, running over the bodies of dead people is also a crime. It's the desecration of corpses. This article focuses on the mental suffering of Israeli soldiers. Look, I believe in humane practices in all cases, and I believe these Israeli soldiers should receive the appropriate support for the traumas they've suffered while perpetrating some of the worst war crimes of our age in prison, behind bars, as part of the process of forcing a genocidal society to confront what it has done. Now, the editor's note, which originally only said details about suicide, might upset some readers, omitting the bit about running over hundreds of human beings, Palestinians, of course, until their insides squirt out, was amended to include violence too. CNN's shame there into having to treat Palestinians as actual human beings. Now, yesterday, the ruling Likud party organised a conference in support of ethnically cleansing Gaza and colonising it. Here, the far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir jubilantly addressed the crowd. Now, as the Israeli newspaper Haaretz and others have noted, the ethnic cleansing and colonisation of Gaza by Israeli settlers is clearly where this is all heading. They're razing Gaza to the ground, killing as many Palestinians as they can get away with, so they can, in time, violently drive out every last surviving Palestinian, erasing Palestinian Gaza from the face of the earth before they finish strangling Palestinian West Bank out of existence too. If you want to understand the mentality here, Sky News interviewed a young Israeli woman at this conference, wearing glasses, a cutesy scarf. She looks, dare I say it, rather sweet. Now, she, according to Sky News, on that note, she is friendly, open, eloquent, and utterly sure of herself. When asked why she wants to live in Gaza, she says, because it's our homeland. It says in the Torah that this is our home, this is our land, and we have every right to live there. When asked what should happen to the Palestinians who already live in Gaza, Sky says she didn't miss a beat in her response. We should kill them, every last one of them. And if the government won't do that, then we should just kick them out. This is our land and we deserve it. This is genocidal mania. No one can say they didn't know, not our politicians and not our media outlets. Indeed, despite the terrible coverage, despite the moral bankruptcy of our leaders, people know what's happening. In Britain, the polling show that 70% believe Israel has committed war crimes, just 8% disagree. That is 1% less than the number of Britons who believe they have directly communicated with the dead. By a large margin, Britain support an arms embargo on Israel and the arrest of its leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. There is no excuse for not knowing. This is one of the worst crimes of our age, and it is happening every single day with Western arms and support and the complicity of our media. We have to keep talking about that because they have to be held to account. There has to be a reckoning. They can't be allowed to get away with it. Not a crime this big, because if so, then total moral collapse beckons, and that moral collapse will have devastating consequences for generations to come. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your thoughts, your comments, help keep the show on the road and help us take on the pro-genocide media at patreon.com/Andreas84. Listen to podcasts. I'll speak to you soon.